Hey, what's up, everybody? Jim, Ahmad, Eric here this week on Keeping It Real. Terry is sitting this one out. We have a lot to kind of go over this week, but first of all, IGN's 20th anniversary is this year.
Yep.
And the folks up in SF, our home office, they have a little soiree, a little public shindig they're throwing. Eric, do you want to tell the folks a little bit about the information
I've got talking points. We did a cool party at E3 for our 20th anniversary, but that was not open to the public. This one is. So this one you can actually get tickets to. So it's 20 years of gaming party. There's gonna be a live show. It's Saturday, October 15th at the Village in San Francisco. That's gonna have highlights of all these cool things that have happened at IGN over the last 20 years. You're gonna see some hosts of some of the IGN shows like Game Scoop and Beyond.
Not us.
Maybe not Keeping It Real. If they teleport, as will be there. There will be surprise guests. There's going to be an after party with games and photo booths. Food and drink will be provided. There'll be live entertainment, IGN personalities. It will also include, if you get a ticket for this party, to go tour IGN's San Francisco office, the main office, on October 14th. So plenty of stuff available. There is a link that I cannot read to you because it's a big internet link. But if you Google IGN 20 Years of Gaming, I think you will find that link, and you should check it out.
And it's also been touted on our at IGN on Twitter.
Yeah.
There's information on it there, and check out our Facebook page. And maybe even this website apparently all work for. I think they have it there.
They had a cool cake at our E3 party that had all these little consoles through the years. So let's see what they have cake-wise
Interesting.
at this party. Yeah.
All right, so on to the matters at hand. Now, last weekend we had we saw the debut of Blair Witch, which of course was the surprise sequel to Blair Witch Project that had shot under the name The Woods and everything. Well, Blair Witch opened in second place, but at $9.6 million, which is considered a disappointment. Now, mind you, I believe they made that movie for $10 million.
Yeah, those movies don't cost anything.
Oh, actually, no, they made it for $5 million. Then, of course, there was some marketing. However, because of that, because it grossed very low, and it also critically was panned, even though we liked it, and the cinema score for it was a D+. So the audiences didn't like it. Now, this has gotten tongues a-wagging in certain corners of the interwebs that horror is dead, and we're here to tell you both.
Horror's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Going anywhere.
So let's talk about why.
Friday the 13th shirt says.
Blair Witch might not be going anywhere again, but again, we'll see how it holds up. But horror's not dead. Let's elaborate why. Eric Goldman, you're probably our biggest horror buff here in the LA office. Tell the folks.
Well, it was very silly to see some of those headlines this week, this year, when so many people had noted, ourselves included, but we are not the only ones, that this has been a great year for horror as far as box office is concerned. I mean, it was just one hit after the other. A lot of these movies way overperformed based on expectations. Yeah. So they're not all going to be hits, just like every comedy's not going to be a hit, every drama's not going to be a hit.
Every comic book movie.
Right.
And they generally don't cost that much to make, for the most part.
That's the big thing,
compared to action movies, compared to
Yeah.
big dramas and period pieces, they're probably, especially in a found footage movie at that, they're generally very cost effective.
Yeah, Blair Witch, I mean, yes, it had these raised expectations because it was a surprise sequel and there was this, can they reignite the franchise question? But at the end of the day, say it had come out as The Woods and it made $10 million on a $5 million budget, it's like, okay.
It'd be a very different headline.
Yeah, it's gonna turn a profit eventually.
It's gonna do fine on home video.
Yeah, that's a movie that's people will be watching for a while, so it's not gonna be a breakout hit, but yeah, for anyone to say that this movie represents some big shift in horror fandom is very
It's
bizarre.
also, though, I feel like we hear this every year.
Every single year.
When there's some horror movie that doesn't perform. Why is horror that kid in school that keeps getting picked on by the more popular genres then?
Maybe because it's never going to be, well, I shouldn't say never, but it's rarely the kind of movies that make, $200 million, right? It's not the movie that everyone goes out to see, even though there is this dedicated fandom. And you can have
James
big
Wan
hits.
is getting them there, though.
Right. But they are still scenes. There are people who just turn up their nose at the genre, and I think that they're almost like looking for it to, now people won't go to horror movies.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think it's more about the genre and the perception of the genre. It's It's a genre about people killing other people and
Yeah.
putting different wrappers on it. So it's never going to be your top genre. It's never going to be your like I said, maybe never say never, but I can't imagine a world with a blockbuster horror movie.
Or where there's like, it's not going to be like comic book movies where it's like, every week you get like a $200 million budgeted horror movie.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they're blockbusters for a different at a different level.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
look at the
the
Blue House
Conjuring
stuff.
movies make far more money than they probably ever should. You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Well,
I'm
yeah.
not saying that as a knock on the movie. I like those movies. I'm saying if somebody had told you a year before, well, The Conjuring is going to get not only a sequel but a spin-off,
Multiple
and now a
spin-offs.
spin-off that's getting a sequel.
Yeah.
Well,
and
like
the other ones,
Insidious or
yeah.
one of those. What was the other one?
There's
a lot.
Yeah.
there's Conjuring, Insidious. There's pretty much anything that Blumhouse or James Wan.
Haven't they already
gets
said
involved.
Lights Out's probably getting a sequel?
Lights Out's
Yeah.
getting? I mean, that thing was made for I think under $5 million, and it's made just a ton of money. We talked about it actually just on one of the recent Keepin' It Reels. Scary movies helped save the summer
Yeah.
box office, and granted, not all of them were horror movies; they were thrillers too. Like, Don't Breathe. Some people are like, it's not really a horror movie. I'm like,
Thriller
if you
a lot
were,
of times
It-
gets
it
bundled
walks a
into.
line.
yeah, I
Thriller,
mean,
ghost
some of that
movies,
stuff in the
supernatural.
basement, that's pretty horrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I just think that what does this say though about Blair Witch? Why didn't Blair Witch connect the way that way we probably kind of expected it would?
Well, I mean, the first Blair Witch had the benefit of being the first of its kind.
Yep.
For having the creepiest kind of marketing campaign.
Mm-hmm.
It had a marketing campaign that had a lot of suspense. You didn't,
People
it was.
who believed it was real.
Yeah, I mean, that campaign went on for months,
Mm-hmm.
and the anticipation really built where people were like, "What is this thing? I really want to see this thing." And then when they saw it, they were usually, most of them presently, they enjoyed the film. So I think this didn't have that same buildup.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we know what the Blair Witch is, and then not having that lead up either. I mean, they only announced that it was Blair Witch, not that long, a couple
July.
of months. Yeah,
Comic-Con.
yeah,
Yeah.
Comic-Con. So it's not like it had that lead up either. So I think it's a couple of things that kind of contributed.
Yeah, it's been 17 years. The movie is, you can't recreate like the event of that movie.
The sequel couldn't.
No, and then the movie itself was polarizing, of course, because there were people who were like, "Oh, that was really cool and creepy," and the people who had, I think, very elevated expectations when it was a very tiny budget, strange little movie that never was intended to have the kind of release it got.
Yeah.
I really liked that movie, but I understood that there were some people that were just not the kind of thing they'd normally go to.
Well, I do wonder, do you think part of the reason why people didn't show up for this one is either, well, it's found footage, so, I can actually wait and watch it on my laptop, or
I can
watch
find it at home.
or VOD, something like that, where you just, it's not like it's screaming giant spectacle you have to go see in the
Yeah.
big screen, but it also, weirdly enough, for a sequel to a movie that was all about that sort of communal reaction, that's a weird reason to not want to go see that movie. It's like, I can watch it at home. Part of the fun of seeing that first movie was seeing it with that audience.
Yeah, but I also think it also, again, it's a very, now 17 years, and then also, it's not like Blair Witch was built around, like the Blair Witch isn't Freddy or Jason, right? Like there's no discernible sort of character there or anything to make, like the
woods.
the iconic
Yeah.
images from that movie is like a dude facing a wall, you know?
Yeah, and that stick figure thing.
And that
Yeah.
stick thing. So it's just, it doesn't lend itself to sort of franchising in the same way that some of these horror movies do.
But do you think maybe though people over the years do you think that movie holds up in terms of the way people remember it? I do feel like 17 years later we've had so much found footage. Is it now something that maybe has faded in people's memory in terms of it's standing?
I don't think people think of it as a found footage movie. I think
Really?
found footage. I think not solely as a found footage movie. I think people think of found footage just as another style of movie.
Yeah.
Like you have your kind of horror porn, and then you have your found footage. It's just a genre of. It's become a genre more than anything else. Yeah. So I think people still think of Blair Witch as this movie, but I don't know that they necessarily think immediately, oh yeah, the found footage.
So you don't think it was rejected, this current one was rejected because it's not another found footage movie.
I mean, I think there is a bit of that. I mean, certainly because, like, we were saying, it's like Blair Witch came out and kind of broke the mold on being that kind of movie in a mainstream way. But then not so many movies did it since. What was there, 6 Paranormal Activity movies?
Yeah.
It's like
And Chronicle.
Yeah. There's been a ton, and there are some people who got really sick of it. And I have a weird sort of. I don't reject them outright for sure because there's some I've really liked, but it always is a little extra hurdle for me because sometimes it feels lazy. It did become such a go-to for so long, for a while. But yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like people it had really dissipated and wasn't something that resonated, with the kids today. The Blair Witch.
It's surprising to me because if you're an executive at Lionsgate, and none of us are, but it would make sense that hey, we have this thing. It was a cultural phenomenon. What can we do now? And you got Adam Wingard, who is one of the more talented suspense and filmmakers. It should have worked.
Yeah.
Why didn't I'm just wondering why didn't that movie pop the way everyone had thought? And I'm thinking maybe Blair Witch just didn't have that sort of lasting.
I just think it was of the moment. It was like you just can't replicate that event. Like they were on the cover of Time, right? And it was like a huge deal.
There were lines at like Laemmle theaters where it was showing because there was in a bunch of the Pasadena Laemmle. There was a line around the block, and like people were like, oh, I can't wait to find out what this thing is. You know, it's like half of it was the mystery and the marketing and the what it is, and then the other half was I saw it, I want to see it again.
So is the Blair Witch dead then as a franchise?
Doubt it.
In horror, you never say never because there's always this idea, like, will we get more of a straight up remake at some point? Something.
Could it work as a TV series?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I think maybe you emulate all those, ghost investigation shows, right? Yeah.
Having to be about a park ranger.
People always want to Forest. By the way,
worst job ever. I got to get out of
before we move on to Blair Witch, I just have to tell. I don't think I've ever told this story on this podcast, but
you're the Blair Witch.
I'm the Blair Witch. No, just the fact that I went to college with the brother of Mike from Blair Witch, a guy named Tom. And when Blair Witch was presented as a real thing, a lot of people bought into it being real. Sci-Fi Channel showed a special. I think it was called Curse of the Blair Witch or something like that. And this guy I knew lived across the hall from me in my dorm in Emerson in Boston, was on it talking about his dead brother. But his brother wasn't dead. But it was like,
But did he tell you his brother wasn't dead? Did he blow the secret?
I think I already knew and everything. But it was just so funny. It was just a funny thing.
Was the guy watching it with you?
That's how far they took it, right? They had these people's real family members talking about them as if they died. So it was very interesting to know this guy.
I don't think you would do that now.
No.
They went all in.
The cast said that they regretted using the real last names. Like, it got into weird.
I forget her name. Heather, was it? She didn't. I think I read somewhere she runs like a pot farm now.
Maybe.
Or something. Yeah.
But Josh works. You see Josh?
Yeah, he's still. Yeah, he was in. He's been
stuff.
in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, he has a good. Resume.
So we want to hear from you guys. Why do you think the Blair Witch didn't connect? When we're talking about the new one, why it didn't connect with audiences this weekend? Let us know in the comments or at keepinitreal@ign.com.
But horror lives.
Horror lives.
Not going anywhere.
Just like Jason lives.
That's right.
Eventually, again. Didn't they? Wasn't there some news on Friday the 13th recently that a director or something? Oh God, this has been.
Well,
a few weeks ago.
Yeah, they have a director. I don't know. The movie keeps getting pushed back. I have a long-standing request to Jim that I get to do the set visit to the new Friday 13th movie, and he said sure, but that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
It keeps being pushed back further.
Well, let's push on from horror to something that is more fantasy, but Dark Tower. Now, this is also something that kind of falls in your wheelhouse a bit.
Yeah.
You're a huge Stephen King fan, and you run the TV section of IGN.com.
I do.
Well, guess what? Do you want to tell the folks what we heard? Now, we all know Dark Tower is coming out as a movie with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey, but What they might not know is
Well, they might not know that the TV show is now again happening because
they might not even know that
there was once
supposed
going to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dark Tower, it took so many years. I was just talking to Terry about this, about how many years it took to actually happen, and how there was the J.J. Abrams version, and then the version
Which we got the scoop on like 10 years ago.
Yeah, you have an interview about that from forever ago. But then for a long time, Ron Howard and Brian Grazer were going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole thing was, of course, it was this massive undertaking for any studio because it was being packaged as a movie trilogy and a TV series where they would run two seasons that would run in between each movie.
Yep.
So it was like just such a commitment. I mean, it's understandable that a studio would be like, that's a lot of money you want us to
So
put
what is
in.
it, like a 7-book series or something? It's
Something like that,
some,
yeah.
like,
It's a lot. So that was what they were trying to do, package it as this, and they talked about, and we'll have the same actor starring in both, and
they were trying to get like Javier Bardem and Russell Crowe at different points.
And there was different times where it seemed like it was going to happen, but it didn't. So then all we knew is they were making this movie that, of course, was meant to be the first of a franchise, but we didn't really hear anything about the TV side. But then this week was news that, yes, the TV show is happening. It's actively being worked on. That the writer and director of the film were involved. That they have to hire someone else to be a showrunner.
Yeah.
But it'll be 10 to 13 episodes, at least the one season. It will act as a prequel to the film. But that Idris Elba is contractually signed on to appear in it, at least in a framing device.
But because it's going to follow the early or the youth of Roland. I think I'm saying his name right, Deschain, the gunslinger.
We think.
I can spell it Deschain, but I think it's pronounced Deschain.
Yeah.
And so, I guess he'll just be a kind of a framing device. As each episode, just him sitting down going,
I remember
that time.
Yeah.
Like,
now, the thing they said is that they don't know yet if McConaughey will be involved, but it's possible. And it's funny that in this day, and even if he hadn't done True Detective, but certainly post-True Detective, it seems like these movie stars are not turning their nose up at such things now.
He's doing
turning
Lincoln
their nose
and
at
Wild
TV.
Turkey.
Yeah.
ads
Nobody.
now, so.
Especially these short commitments, that it's not a series he's saying I'll do for years and years. The other thing we don't know, though, but they said even if he's not in it, his character will appear because his character is a shapeshifter, so they can have him appear one way or the other.
You get cheaper Matthew McConaughey.
Right.
So,
But we
Josh Lucas, you're up.
We don't know who's going to distribute it yet. It's Sony producing, but
And what are they?
MRC?
DRC?
MRC.
MRC.
Yeah.
MRC it's a co-production.
right, it's co-production, but they don't know yet who's going to actually air it. So instantly, of course, you're going to I think all the obvious names: Netflix, HBO, and FX are probably the
What about
three most likely.
AMC though? Because doesn't Sony and AMC have a pre-existing relationship with Breaking Bad and Preacher and
It would fit in their
another one.
wheelhouse.
Yeah. I mean that's definitely going to be in the mix. So I think that'll be especially it's going to be a tantalizing package. And who knows, but it's like I could see Netflix doing the thing of like, well, what if we, get the streaming rights to the movies too, and we have the show, there'll be a lot of different, I'm sure, bidding iterations of that, but it's happening.
Now I have not read the Dark Tower books, and when I hear that it's this like multi-book saga, and
Well, the characters also, Stephen King has his whole connected universe thing, so the characters also appear in other books where they might not be the main characters.
Right,
so
right.
It made me seem a little more daunting than it actually is.
Well, I guess the movie though is kind of a sequel in a way to the books,
Right.
like so that they're not having to be slavish about adapting the books, and I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges they were facing.
Yeah.
It's a smart move.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, I haven't read the books either, even though I'm a giant Stephen King fan who's read most of his books multiple times. Just haven't read The Dark Tower, but I am determined to before this movie comes out. So.
And we have a lot of Dark Tower fans up at the San Francisco office.
All right, let's switch from Dark Tower to a very different saga, Star Wars. Now, Rogue One's been in the news a bit this week about the Bob Iger, the head of Disney, was talking to some shareholders, I believe, and basically they're dialing down box office expectations. For
which
Rogue
is a
One.
smart move.
Yeah, he's like, look, it's not going to make Force Awakens money.
Right.
But by the same token, he's also saying, well, the interest in Rogue One is as fever pitch as it was for Force Awakens.
Right.
I mean, we've said before, there's no way you're going to recapture, even Episode 8 isn't going to recapture that Force Awakens.
Right.
No, the
Fever.
first of the three is always going to make usually a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get a little slightly diminishing returns, although diminishing returns at a Star Wars movie is still
Yeah.
a buttload of
What
cash.
do you guys think it will do? Okay, are we looking at a movie that could make $1 billion?
I think it can make $1 billion. Yeah, I think that's if it is perceived as a successfully entertaining film, I think it makes.
I
$1
mean,
billion.
because, and I'm not
But I
bringing
think
this up to kick the prequels,
Yeah.
but I'm like, look, that was a movie where audiences were clearly divided walking out of that, and bad word of mouth or mixed word of mouth didn't hurt them. You know,
No.
so
no, I think it's
because
making
that and there. I'm sorry,
I know.
but there was a longer gap there, so people were really, really, really hungry for Star Wars, and when
Yeah.
they
Sure.
got it, they were like, "It's okay.
Yeah.
I'll go see another one," and it, you know.
But I
we
think
say-
I think I guess I'd be surprised if Rogue One doesn't make at least 700, 800 million. Like I think that is the low end for it. But yeah, of course, expectations have to be put in check, and it's interesting because it's very much like Marvel as far as if you consider. The episode movies, the Avengers movies. It's like
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
this is Ant-Man, this is
is
Guardians.
Ant-Man. Yeah.
But it's harder for people to see that distinction because it's still called Star Wars, even if it's a subtitle.
Yeah.
And again, I know you guys have talked a lot about sort of audience confusion. It's not like an Ant-Man trailer where it's like, oh, that's a completely new character.
It's more like Guardians.
Yeah, because
it's more like Guardians.
But even
Like,
this, it's like there's even more than that because there's so many trappings, especially in Rogue One, that
Death
like
Star,
the
Vader.
Death Star, stormtroopers, like
Yeah.
the aesthetic is so Star Wars, which I understand.
although the stormtrooper that you see the most aren't the traditional
Right.
stormtroopers. You get a lot of the Death Troopers in that.
yeah.
So it's like the same but different.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
do you guys? I mean, do you think that the Star Wars anthology movies will they really be a thing after Rogue One and Han Solo?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I'm somehow I get this feeling in my gut that they're going to just stick with the actual saga.
So do you think that means like the next movie after Episode 9 is Episode 10?
Probably, or a spin-off following characters that were introduced in this new trilogy. Because I'm just not, we're not hearing enough about these other anthology films in development. Yes, they're making a Han Solo movie. Again, a prequel, and you're following a character that you already know.
Yeah.
It's a gamble because it's a new guy playing him, but
It's the safest, smartest way to go.
Yeah.
Is take existing. I mean, what they're doing with Rogue One is very, very different than what they originally were talking about. Remember, there was the Bounty Hunter movie or a Boba Fett movie.
yeah,
and then
the one Josh Trank was going to do that we
Yeah.
never quite knew.
Don't say that.
But I just don't. I'm just not.
Rogue One is
Wouldn't we
I think Rogue One
hear
is a
more about
test.
these things in development?
I don't know. I think, he mentioned, was it Iger on that call said they have a writer for the third one.
Yeah, but
they're
I-
very good with secrets. I will say that. I mean,
Yeah.
Lucasfilm are amazingly good with secrets. And
Between Lucasfilm and J.J. Abrams, those are the
right.
biggest secret
And
keepers.
once in a while, because I'll hear someone say something that I can't repeat for work purposes, but I'm like, oh wow, that really interesting. Like there's stuff that I don't know. I think if any company is good at playing things close to the vest, it's them.
But
so.
if, let's say, Rogue One is considered a bit of an underperformer,
Yeah.
or just, it does say like X-Men Apocalypse level
Right.
business, where it's not embarrassing, but it's just sort of a mixed bag of like, well, do we keep going with these kind of spin-offs? Or
No,
what?
I think what if Rogue One, I think the call was to manage expectations and to lower them a little bit to a realistic level. I don't think they're being jerks about it. I think they're just saying, look, this isn't the traditional Star Wars saga. These are new characters from an old environment.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think once they get it down there, and if it doesn't perform the way they want to, they can still chalk it up to, well, you didn't know any of these characters anyway.
Right.
You know Han Solo,
Yeah.
you know Boba Fett, you know it. And I think the anthology, if this doesn't work the way they wanted to, they just move to all of the anthology movies being characters
yeah,
we've
ones we've
met.
even heard rumors.
It'll
Yoda,
be
Obi-Wan.
it'll be Yoda, Obi-Wan.
The
It'll
Ugnaughts movie, it's happening.
it'll be Boba Fett. And
Speaking of
The
Jango
Boba
Ugnaughts
Fett.
movie should
Speaking-
be called the Ugnaughts movie.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
What about the Lobot
like-
trilogy?
It's like
There you
Boogie
go.
House. Yeah, the Lobot trilogy. The Lobot Chronicles. Starring Ben Kingsley as Lobot. Yeah, and the comics, we had a story up on the site that they're going to cover Yoda's backstory in the comics. Well, do you know anything more?
I mean, I only glanced at that myself, but yeah.
Didn't they already cover Yoda's
It's called
backstory
It
in
Isn't
the
Easy
EU?
Being
No,
Green.
no.
right?
I mean, well, even if they did, it's not canon.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything that, but Yoda's backstory was very. Even if I shouldn't say for a fact that I know they never dealt with it in the EU, but it was one of the things left the most mysterious. Like I don't think they've ever named his planet, even in the EU. But
had 800 years of
certainly not
adventures
canon.
there.
So anything that delves into actual like history of Yoda would be brand new as far as being official canon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think they would use that as sort of the basis for a movie if they ever did do a Yoda movie?
It doesn't sound like they're-
Kid Yoda?
I don't know if they. I mean, it could fuel it. It doesn't sound like
200-year
they're.
Kid Yoda.
It doesn't sound like they're gonna. I don't get the idea that they're gonna make a comic book or a book and then make a movie version of the same story.
Yeah.
I just think the idea is, it's all canon, it's all interlocking.
And they are talking about a TV series again, so there's always that.
Yeah. I do
That's
think
where
that
you go with
Star
characters
Wars
you
TV
don't know.
series is really ever going to happen, though.
Yeah, I do.
If they can find a
Live
cost-effective,
action.
if you can find a cost-effective way to
Yeah.
do it, why wouldn't you?
I do think one day. Yeah, I just think for Disney and ABC and everyone, I just feel like why we.
You follow Finn's buddies in sanitation
There you go.
on an Imperial base.
Right.
Who are just like, yeah, man, it's sort of like The Office or something, but with Imperial.
Stormtroopers, yeah.
That was one thing. And another thing about the Star Wars show is they're sitting on like 200 scripts for the other show that they were developing.
Yeah.
The one
Yeah.
weren't they going to shoot it in Thailand, I think?
I don't know what they said, but yeah,
They have there's a buttload of material sitting
Yeah,
there.
no,
And
I
there was
think
that
yeah,
Seth
there's.
Green one.
Well, that one has completed episodes, which is crazy. But yeah,
What?
the live action show, the Detours, the animated series, that there's like 3 seasons.
Why did they never release those?
Because it was just I do think what they said is kind of true. You just kind of read more into it, which is that it was not the kind of messaging they wanted on Star Wars with Disney buying it and going in this, doing their own thing. Because I was at the Star Wars Celebration panel for it and saw that footage, some of which was put on YouTube. It was this very wacky show taking the original trilogy characters and putting them in very silly, sort of goofy situations, and them knowing we're actually going to bring back Han, Luke, and Leia. We don't want to introduce, basically, I think Seth Green even said this, that their thinking was probably, this is not how we want to introduce kids to these characters who don't know them at all. It's like the
Yeah.
goofy version. It's like we
Sort
want
of
to
what
make
happened to Fowler's kids only knowing Star Wars from watching the
Family Guy specials.
parodies.
Yeah, kind of like that. But yeah, they've got those. They got. I know they have 50 scripts for that live action show, and Ron Moore wrote for it, and some other really
Right.
big writers. So the
What
fact
was
that
the gist of the live action? Was it a Bounty Hunter show?
people say that it was
Sorry.
all that stuff they said about sort of
Was
that
it 1313 stuff?
It was probably related to that. It was underworld crime, sort
Yeah.
of, crime world stuff. Boba Fett was probably involved in it. But it was going to be about sort of like the crime side of things in Star Wars.
The
So
Hutts. It would have been like The Sopranos. And,
yeah, if nothing else, though, you think like one day they'd publish those as books or something.
Yeah,
It's kind of
seriously.
amazing. Yeah.
Some other Star Wars news this week. We found out that the composer of Rogue One, that there's been a switcheroo. Alexander Desplat, I think I'm saying his name right, was supposed to score it. He's now out. And Michael Giacchino, who did Star Trek and Pixar movies, and
Lost.
they're both Oscar winners, I
Yeah.
believe, right? So, he's going to step in to score. And the reason given was that the movie has changed considerably, I guess, from
It's probably moved
Due to the
from a war movie to more of a traditional adventure movie.
Well, didn't they? I thought they gave explanation being scheduling, just as far as that because there was the reshoots, the movie they didn't have a finished version of the movie for him to start scoring until later. But it does sort of speak to, right, because two composers whose names I'm going to massacre, Desplat, who I'm a big fan of. I loved his work on the final 2 Harry Potter films. But yeah, he seems like the darker, edgier. They're both amazingly talented, by the way. But he does seem the guy you go to for if you're going for like a darker tone than a guy who's done like the Abrams Star Trek movies and a lot of Pixar and does wonderful sort of rousing,
Sweeping, hopeful.
yeah, Star Wars
Did
type music.
Giacchino ever succeed John Williams in a franchise? I feel like he has.
No.
Because Desplat did with Star
Potter.
Wars. Yeah, with Potter.
I don't think so, because if you look at Giacchino Kano, he's done like everything Abrams, including his TV series, Alias, Fringe, Lost, and then a lot of Pixar. But I don't think he's succeeded Williams. But he's the kind of guy you'd go to, right?
Yeah, right.
He
Yeah,
definitely is.
And then finally, I think that's it for our Star Wars stuff for this week. Although I can make a segue. You know who's in Star? We know Benicio del Toro is in Star Wars Episode 8. You know what else he might be in? Predator reboot. We don't know in what role, but I kind of hope it's his character from Sicario. And this time, his toughest assignment is going after the Predator
franchise.
That's the one that Shane Black is making. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So Justice League. They released, leading up to last weekend's Batman Day. We got you guys got your first look at
This guy
the
already
Batman
saw it.
tactical suit, which I saw on set.
In person.
Yeah, saw it with my own eyes, and it's it's pretty cool. But what you guys think of the look of that suit?
I feel like everything, the cinematic DC universe is taking all the best cues from the Arkham games, and I am 100% happy with that. They're taking the fighting cues, it seems like, the look, the feel. This costume looks like it's straight out of Arkham. It's a little, although it's a little mix of the Nolan verse with the pads and stuff like that, but
Yeah, it's
I don't
just a
have a
lot
problem.
more plating over the actual regular Batman suit, but he's got
less-
those gold, the gold lenses, and that's tied into piloting the Flying Fox, from what they told us in the set visit.
yeah, less bat bruises, so it's fine.
I mean, a lot of people brought up the fact that it's kind of funny because it evoked Night Owl,
Yeah.
which is who obviously was inspired a lot by Batman anyway, and Zack Snyder directed the Watchmen movie.
Yeah.
But it did kind of look like it. But no, it looked cool to me. I agree with you that I feel like a lot of the Batman stuff is being taken from the Arkham games. I mean, as you know.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, that one great fight scene he had in Batman vs Superman felt
1,000.
very much
And we
like,
have
It
Deathstroke
felt like
coming up.
it felt like a Batman Arkham City cutscene.
felt completely like that.
Except it didn't look like it.
Right.
It looked like it, whereas there's the Batman Arkham Origins scene with Batman fighting that was directed by the director of Deadpool, where you're like, oh, yeah, that could be in a movie. This was the same thing, but live action and awesome.
Yeah.
And then the detail on the suit, it almost looked like, because the Batman movie suits are almost always basically like sort of exaggerated musculature. Although the Batman vs Superman one, not so much. But this seemed to be going back to that. Although it almost reminded me of Batman Returns, which didn't try to do the like fake abs as much as looking like armor, you know.
yeah.
And this was a little.
Was that the
bit,
one with the silver plates on it?
No,
Not-
that
it
was
wasn't
Batman Forever.
Yeah, it wasn't silver. It was just it was like taking the Batman '89 one, but just not trying to make it.
turned
look,
it into grill work. And
Yeah,
they
it-
did a
oh,
little bit
yeah,
of
yeah.
that
instead
in
of
Dark Knight.
abs,
Yeah.
it was like
Yeah, it was a little-
It's
Yeah.
funny, you look back at Batman '89 and Bob Ringwood, the costume designer. Really, I mean, my God, every comic book movie since then, and particularly, every Batman movie has basically still stuck with that same essential way of making the suit. It's out of rubber, and it's there's the one-piece cowl and all that. Except for Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, they did the
Well, they
two-piece
addressed
thing.
it.
Yeah, but it was just amazing that guy's work from 1989 is still like such an influence.
The other thing I always think about that movie's Batman totally influences the use of like the sort of little harpoon spear gun.
Yeah,
Because
grappling gun.
prior to that, he'd
That
always
was
throw a batarang with the rope around it, and then that movie he used that gun, and like every version of Batman now uses that.
It went from there to the animated series, and it was canon.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
And then the Arkham games. had
Yeah,
a
the
cool version
Arkham
of it.
games.
We also got, again, you guys also got your first look at J.K. Simmons as Commissioner Gordon. Granted, it was a black and white photo, and he was in the background, but that was the scene that we saw being filmed that day. It was his first day on set as Commissioner Gordon. What do you guys think of that? I mean, looks like Commissioner Gordon.
Snyder gives good image.
desaturated image.
Yeah.
He's good. Well, although I love J.K. Simmons, but when I see him, he was so iconic as J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
It's hard to see him in another genre film and like, shouldn't he be yelling at Parker about those pictures?
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
right.
man.
He you couldn't see from that image because he's wearing the hat and the trench coat. But he does have hair in the movie. That was one of the questions we wanted an answer to. Will we have a bald Commissioner Gordon? And the answer is no. He will have a wig. And he does have the mustache.
Much like J.K. He had it as J. Jonah Jameson, I can say his name.
Yes. Curious what you guys thought about the Batman images that came out. So let us know at keepingitreal@ign.com. Warner Brothers Brass also said this week, like similar kind of shareholders calls, that the DC universe is on track and that they're doing better, and they're doing it. They could be doing a better job in execution, but for the most part, like they didn't throw their stuff under the bus, as of course they wouldn't. But
it's good that they didn't. For morale. It's like you can admit that there's stuff that you can still fix, but move forward.
All right. So at the end of the day, I'm going to look up the numbers now, but it's well over 700 million now. Well, maybe not well over, but it's over 700 million. In your guys' estimation, is Suicide Squad a hit? A draw? What do you think?
No, it's a hit.
It's a hit. It's a hit. And there's some asterisks on it, but it's still a hit movie. When you look at like just what the characters were, what kind of movie it was. That it was the first, of this new DC
villain-led film.
720.8 million worldwide.
Yeah, that's a hit. I mean,
it's the same conversation that we had about Blair Witch. If that movie was called something else with different characters and it cost that much and made that much, the conversation wouldn't be, is it a hit or not? It would be like, the movie did pretty good.
Yeah.
The movie about those people escaping from that thing and getting the thing.
But how much do you think, despite its commercial success, the sort of mixed bag critically and the divide amongst fans, although I think there's less of a divide amongst fans than there was with BVS, do you think Warner Brothers heeds those lessons or
I do.
think there's a lesson to be learned there if people still show up?
It's actually funny because Suicide Squad, ironically, though I think there are people who are, even though I didn't like it, I think there are more legitimate fans of Suicide Squad than there were of Batman vs. Superman. I know there are some fans of Superman, but I think there are more people who love Suicide Squad. That being said, it's obviously the movie that was more troubled behind the scenes. Apparently, by all counts, Warner Brothers was
Superman just ran.
Yeah, and they were surprised by the reaction to it.
Yeah.
Versus Suicide Squad, which sounds like a very troubled movie where a lot of things happen behind the scenes. So that's kind of, they definitely are taking lessons from all of it. I mean, I don't think they come out of this year being like, we nailed it. Everything's great. Yeah. But at the same time, they can definitely. Suicide Squad is a hit for sure. But I think that they don't want it to happen the same way.
Right.
Getting there.
It did what it was supposed to do. It made money. Didn't tank the franchise. Didn't sour it so much that that the detractors won't see another movie, and it didn't. It made the people who would see a movie see another one.
Or just see those characters in different movies.
I can't imagine.
I think more likely you would just see it. I think because the biggest, the unqualified things I think of that movie are that people like Deadshot and they liked Harley Quinn, and they
liked Amanda Waller.
Yeah.
So
those characters will be exploited.
And Boomerang, we already know. I'm sure he'll show up in the Flash movie.
Also he'll get his own movie. It's Captain Boomerang Chronicles.
He's joking, people.
I am, but I do. I mean, I think they're the biggest creative and the huge question I am so fascinated about is how do they handle Joker going forward? Who everything we're hearing was the character most cut out of the movie that I think is the most divisive part of this movie that honestly.
Even the actor who played him.
Yeah, and I hear way less people saying I love the Joker than I hear saying I love Suicide Squad. Yeah. So I think that's their biggest creative question.
I think what you do is you just when the Batman films start coming out, you don't lean into Joker immediately. You wait, and they'll just take the temperature as things go on. And whoever's going to be in that first Batman movie, whether it's Deathstroke or somebody else, it won't be the Joker.
Yeah.
And maybe the second movie, and maybe the third movie, but they can take their time. You don't need to rush to show Joker again. You can even we know Harley will probably show up again.
And she's going to probably get her own spin-off.
Yeah, and I think she shows up sooner than later.
That'd be interesting. It'd be interesting, especially given what we learned about her involvement in Robin, how you do another movie with her as a lead.
Yeah.
Unless you somehow team her up with Deadshot again, which I think people would see.
Yeah. I just feel like, I feel like this year, the success, Deadpool and Harley Quinn were two characters that were so beloved by comic book fans and had this sort of pop culture little corner, and then these movies made them
It's also 90s nostalgia. There's a whole generation of people who grew up with those characters, and they hadn't, well, in one case, they hadn't been done right before on screen, and then, So there was definitely an appetite for that. So yeah.
So I think
And those
Harley
two-
Quinn is such a success for them with that.
And with coming off of Focus, those two, Will and Margot, clearly have on-screen chemistry together.
Yeah.
They work really well together. Maybe they'll show up again. I can't imagine Deadshot coming back, but it'd be nice.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to have to wheel out that barrel of money for
Yeah,
Will.
yeah.
He's not going to come
I
cheap.
bet I think they'll get him.
They
Yeah.
can find it.
Yeah.
But I think it's, like you said, it's more of a jumping off. Like, okay, now we've introduced these people that we can throw in a whole bunch of other movies.
Right, right. I think we did not do a show the week that Jeff Johns confirmed to the Wall Street Journal that Deathstroke is the villain in the solo Batman movie. I'm just curious, do you guys think, is Deathstroke, is he enough to be the only to be the main villain in a Batman movie, or they need to kind of throw in some more iconic ones that maybe the broader audience knows, like a Catwoman or something like that?
He's a great villain. There's a lot you can do with him. I think they picked somebody who's more of a physical and mental match for Batman. I would have rather seen somebody who's from Batman's Rogues Gallery than somebody from the Titans Rogues Gallery, because I'd rather see a standalone Titans film. Like if I was going to make a Nightwing movie, I'd make Deathstroke the villain.
Right.
Yeah, interesting,
But
yeah.
having Deathstroke, I think, since he's kind of been tested on the TV version, just like Suicide Squad was tested on the TV version, I think now they're like, hey, this character was popular in this medium, now we'll bring him over, and I'm sure he'll be fine.
I think that to answer your question, as far as I think that both are true in that I think Deathstroke is strong enough to be the main villain, but I also bet you anything we will see one or two other more familiar Batman villains pop up.
Yeah.
Especially because they actually have more license to now, because he's supposed to be a Batman who's been around for years.
Yeah.
So he can be fighting someone and he's has a history with them, and you don't have to do some the origin of the Mad Hatter.
Yeah.
It's like he can
Crazy Quilt.
Yeah,
Throwing the Riddler in jail at the beginning of the movie, and you
Yeah.
can do it. You can handle it that way.
That'd be interesting. Hear your guys' thoughts on that at keepitreal@ign.com or in the comments below. A couple of other things I want to throw out there. We did get our first look at, via these little vignettes, these TV ads, I should say, for Ghost in the Shell, the live-action movie with Scarlett Johansson. Now, I'll be completely honest, I am not overly familiar with Ghost in the Shell. I want to get into it, but I haven't yet. Ghost in the Shell has certainly been controversial so far, but it does look like they're leaning into selling it as this sort of techno cyber thing, but more so Scarlett Johansson movie. And you loved her in Lucy,
Well, the way that they launched the teasers was really interesting. They launched it during Mr. Robot. They didn't brand them. So I got 2 teasers in before you really get a look that, oh yeah, that's Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
The first one you can't really tell. The second one, you get her from the side and you're like, hey, wait a minute. By the third one, you're like, oh, okay. So I think they made the right idea of where to launch it.
Yeah.
I think that part of that audience. I think if you were going to launch it somewhere else, you'd go with something that was a little more apparent. Like, this is Ghost in the Shell, and this is what this is about.
Yeah.
This was I think it was a smart place to tease it.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't. Ghost in the Shell. I mean, it doesn't have a large enough audience. Well, certainly not in America, to count on Ghost in the Shell fans. They need to sell this movie to everyone. So, yeah, I think this is an interesting, kind of cool approach they're doing. This sort of mysterious way they're marketing it.
I want to ask you guys about this other new trailer that we finally got our first footage from Passengers. Now, this was I believe, a Blacklist script, and it's Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, and it's a big science fiction movie. And,
$2 billion opening. But, sorry.
well, look, it's about 2 people on a sleeper ship in space who wake up 90 years before they're supposed to be woken up, and they can't go back to sleep. So, it's a very interesting high concept, but, it's big, expensive sci-fi that isn't tied to an existing brand. Did that trailer, how do you think that movie will do? Is star power enough to make that an event movie, or?
I think those 2 stars, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and you just think back a couple of years to Gravity, which was a big hit,
True.
And this has more of a obviously sci-fi bent than Gravity, which was set in space but was still much more
Traditional science.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the combination of those two and the trailer, which I didn't think was like an amazing trailer, but I thought it was a decent trailer that ends on a cool note where you're like, oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, I think that'll be a nice holiday hit.
I was a little surprised in the trailer to see Jennifer Lawrence, who we know as Katniss, and this very, always a forthright character, even when she's like a damaged character. But, just playing kind of the girlfriend role, like everyone driving the action in that trailer is Chris Pratt. And I couldn't help but think of Finn and Rey when they're running down the hallway holding hands. And mind you, I think Pratt and Lawrence are supposed to be, their characters eventually probably become a romantic item. But just thinking of when Rey is yelling at Finn, "Don't hold my hand," like, it seemed a little bit more traditional, not damsel in distress, but sort of like, she just seemed to be kind of taking a back seat, at least in driving the action to Pratt's character.
That could just be in the editing of what
Yeah, because what I hear, that's not, I mean, and especially even the end of the trailer insinuates that like there's more going on here as far as what his motivations are, so I have a feeling there'll be more to it than that.
Interesting. All right, let's see. Oh, Fast and Furious 8 now. Paul Walker's brothers, Caleb and Cody, revealed to, I believe it was Entertainment Tonight this week, that they've had conversations with Vin Diesel, has spoken to them about wanting to use Paul Walker's likeness in a cameo of bringing back Brian O'Connor. Tacky, should they just let it go? It was such a wonderful send-off for him at the end of Furious 7.
You go first.
No, don't blame him.
No. I get it for franchise nostalgia, but no,
it just seems like there's no way in which this isn't going to pull you out of the movie.
I think that like they had such a daunting situation to deal with in the seventh one that they did very well at the end. Now it's weird, right? Because they wrote him out and they gave him this very emotional out that was a weird mixture of real life and not, because the character didn't die, yet they still were respecting Paul Walker, so it got this montage and everything that really was obviously a nod to the fact that this person is no longer with us, even though the character is just supposed to be like leaving this life. That being said, I don't see how you bring him back. It's hard because the franchise continues. The only way, and even then it would be hard, but if they end it with, and it's so funny to say, with the 10th one, because they've announced through 10, they have release dates, I could see the very end being the like walking up to him at a house or something, he's on the porch.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like I don't see how you bring him back before then.
What if there's
not as a character.
Yeah,
what if they find like
a look
they're
at
just
his
watching
family
like
or
old movies, but there's some clue or something in the background, like something like was supposed to have been recorded in the past.
I feel like anything like that opens the door to, well, why don't they just call him? Like, it's like that's the weird problem.
He's off the grid, man.
That's the weird problem of writing him out but continuing the franchise, is that he still reasonably would be someone that they could reach out to.
You still follow him on Twitter.
So you have to kind of ignore that. So the more they remind you of him, if in any active way, it would be strange.
They did the send off. Leave it.
Yeah.
I just want to also acknowledge that there was some news this week that this upcoming movie, Monster Trucks, starring Lucas Till and
I believe we talked about the trailer
Levitt.
on a previous
We
Keepin' It
did.
Real.
It's the most ridiculous trailer. It's literal monsters and trucks.
Yeah.
And Viacom announced this week that they're expecting a $115 million write-down. I don't think the movie even opens up until 2017, January. So they already know, like, this thing cost $125 million.
And they didn't name the movie, but THR said this is what they're talking about. Yeah, which other people already suspected.
But come on, first of all, why did Monster Trucks cost $125 million, especially when the effects look so bad? What happened?
The screen image I saw looked like something that came out of 1986.
Yep.
That it looked very there was something very old and familiar looking about it in a bad way.
Yeah.
When you sent me the trailer, I was shocked this was a theatrical film. Like if you told
was that
me,
when you were convulsing upstairs?
Probably.
It's like one of those movies within a movie, like when they had Adam Sandler as like Merman and like Funny People or whatever. Yeah.
But even like even if I would say a sci-fi movie, but because it does feel like so goofy and kid oriented, I'm like, if you told me it was a Disney Channel movie, I would go okay. But I was like, wait, this is a theatrical film from Paramount, and then I read that it cost over $100 million, and I was like, floored. Like I was like, I can't believe it. And they said that, they envisioned it as being like a big tentpole movie, only to realize it was more of a kids movie. I'm like, what was happening? Like something went very off the rails.
That seems like an idea got greenlit, and then they were like, okay, you've greenlit your idea. I'm going to go back to producing my other stuff, and like nobody was minding the store for like a development period.
It run itself.
Yeah, exactly. And people were like, let's just try some stuff.
Let's do it.
On a sad note, we lost director Curtis Hanson this week. He directed one of my top 10 favorite movies, and I've done my top 10's up on the side. He did L.A. Confidential, which is just a masterpiece. I love that movie.
Yeah, like
starring two Aussies though. Just saying.
Starring two
Aussies.
One's a Kiwi.
Okay.
Russell Crowe is a Kiwi.
Yeah, a couple years ago, most of the editors in the LA office did our top 10 lists, and LA Confidential did not make mine, and it was so close to. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's so great, and it's funny because like I think it's more like in your kind of normal wheelhouse, that movie, and for me it's not, and yet I just was like, this is astounding film. It's like just a perfect movie.
It's one of those movies I watch over, every time I see it, I learn something new. It's like watching it again for the first time. Goodfellas is like that for me. And it's just, it's such a great movie. He directed many other films though too.
Wonder Boys is really good too.
Yeah. Wonder Boys is great. And River Wild, the one where Meryl Streep is action star.
Yep.
And then he did, was it Bad Influence with James Spader and Rob?
Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Hand That Rocks the Cradle. So unfortunate,
really. News. And if you haven't seen LA Confidential, check it out.
Call Rollo Tomasi.
Yes.
He'll help you out.
Indeed.
Okay, let's look ahead at what's opening up this weekend. Two big releases are going to be duking it out this weekend. We got Magnificent Seven and Storks. Now, Storks we didn't like. We posted a review of that, gave it a negative review. And Magnificent Seven, which I've seen, I have not seen Storks, but I agree with Terry's review, which is that it's an okay to good movie. Like, it's perfectly fun and fine. Our colleague at Daily Beast, Jen Yamato, just really nailed it when she said, yeah, it's Fast and Furious with horses. And it's a fun movie, but it's kind of like just eating a slice of pizza. Yeah, that hits the spot. But is it the best pizza you'll ever have? No. Will you think about that slice of pizza tomorrow? Probably not, but it's perfectly fine for what it is.
Which is good, because some movies are just entertainment. Some movies are just, you just need to get out of your life for a couple of hours, not 3, Batman, and that's all you need. You just need a movie that gets you from A to B and is entertaining. And some movies don't need to be any more than that, which is fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a great cast. It's got Denzel, Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke, Vincent D'Onofrio, who I actually interviewed for this over the phone the other day, and I reminded him, he never knew this, but I told him an anecdote of I was mugged years ago. I was like 17 years old, and this big kid came up to me. I was standing outside of a bowling alley, of all places to get mugged. And I could just see this kid was, something's up with him. But I'm looking at him like, wow, he looks just like Vincent D'Onofrio in Full Metal Jacket. And the kid pulls a knife on me. And so the cops come. I got to go down the station and look at photos. And I remembered this kid's face vividly because I had just watched Full Metal Jacket. I was like, hey, this kid looks just,
Private Pile.
And so I told D'Onofrio this, and he got a big fit of laughing out of it. He's like, never knew I also could stop crime. This is amazing.
Apprehended.
Yeah, so Magnificent Seven comes out this weekend. It's very fun. Go check it out if you want. Also opening this weekend, Storks, which will probably edge up Magnificent Seven probably at the box office. It's a kids movie, animated. The Dressmaker, starring Kate Winslet, Queen of Katwe, I think I'm pronouncing that right. IT, starring Pierce Brosnan, but it's also on video on demand. And then a movie that I saw recently that actually came out 2 years ago in Europe, but it's Christoph Ganz's retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Now, Christoph Gans, if you guys don't, the name might not ring a bell to you, but he directed the Silent Hill movie and Brotherhood of the Wolf. And it's visually sumptuous, but there's just an emptiness to it. It's sort of, you never quite connect with either Beauty or the Beast. The Beast, it was done via motion capture, but it's almost like it's too much. It's like just digitally sort of erased any expression from Vincent Cassel's face. But it's an interesting, visually interesting, and very ornamented, I guess is the best way I can put it. Like production design, everything really beautiful, but there's just sort of an emptiness to it there, you know? So it's just interesting that that's coming out just a few months before the Disney remake of their musical
they'll do
animated
better.
movie. I think that one's got it's got a little bit of an edge,
Yeah.
a little bit of an edge. But Beauty and the Beast, that's also available via Shout Factory, and that's going to be coming out in home videos soon as well. So if you,
Cotway's got a good cast.
yeah, Cotway's got Lupita Nyong'o and David Oyelowo. I think I'm saying
Two
his
Star
name.
Wars actors.
Exactly. So that's also, that's limited release this weekend, broader release next weekend. So that'll about do it for this week's show. You can check out our other shows like Beyond and I'm drawing a blank, superhero show. Which one?
Oh, I was going to say Up at Noon. And
Up
some
at
of the other
Noon, all that
shows.
shit. We're on all these different platforms. Yes, I'm going to give Roku a shout because I have a Roku. You follow us online on Twitter at the Eric Goldman, at Ahmad Childress, at Jim Veveda. Send us your thoughts at keepingitreal@ign.com. For all things movies, keep it here on IGN.